Well, I graduated from high school, and at that time I was in the Naval Reserve. You had to serve 8 years at that time, and you joined the reserve unit and to get your time started. And so I joined the Navy Reserve. That was only to get my 8-year obligation done. And in fact, I went into the Navy after that, and I spent 4 years, and I got out. Well, then I get a call from my old executive officer that said, "Hey, you're going to get recalled." I said, "What do you mean recalled?" Yeah, you're going to be recalled. It's going to be released for another year. So Fran and I talked it over, and by that time I'd had almost 8 years in. And so I figured, well, we could do 12 years standing on our head. And that's when we decided to go regular Navy and just stay in for 12 years. Well, fortunately, I was never seasick. I got, when we'd always go to sea, it'd take me about 3 days to get used to the motion. I remember we picked up mostly in new officers. And the officers always they had the steaming watches. You know, we had an officer up there every hour and all the time. And so we got outside of San Francisco, and off of San Francisco, about 10 or 15 miles of the Farallones. And the Farallones, you run into huge ground swells. So the ship starts rolling and rocking and rolling. Well, if you're going to get seasick, that's where you get seasick. And then if you're going to stay seasick, you're seasick 3,000 miles to Hawaii. Well, unfortunately, all the officers except the CEO, the commanding officer, myself, and the XO were sick. And I mean, it was bad weather, and they stayed sick. So the commanding officer and the executive officer and myself had to stand all the watches all the way. And so we were going 4 on, 8 off, 4 on, 4 off, and we did that for 5 days. Well, we finally got into Hawaii, and everybody's about settled down then. The one benefit I had is I never had to stand another watch the whole cruise. But all the other officers finally survived. But we did have to sometimes put a sailor off in Hawaii because you'd get so dehydrated if you couldn't get over your seasickness. But I never got seasick in all the years I was at sea. One time we were going down through the Straits of Andaman, which is off of Taiwan, between Taiwan and China. And we were resupplying some people down there, and we were heading that way, and we had a submarine on our tail. And so we sent a message to the fleet commander and said, "We got a submarine on our tail." And he said, "Well, try to keep him." Well, here we are on an ammunition ship with 5,000 tons of ammunition, and we're supposed to keep a submarine on our tail. Well, we did. We kept changing course, and he kept following us, and pretty soon we got to the southern ends of the Straits, and there was 2 destroyers waiting for him. And so they're the Man and the McHatton, and they jumped on that submarine. They kept him down for 3 days. Well, then he surfaced, and they sent the 159th most serious protest from the Soviet government for interrupting their military maneuvers, but it was just that kind of a game. I had to go to San Diego and go to nuclear weapons training school, and I became the courier for arming devices. And they sent the bombs over, and they sent the arming device afterwards. And there was already a courier with the arming device, and you had to sign for it. And the bomb wouldn't do anything without the arming device. So we were then going to transfer the first bomb at sea, and we transferred it to, I guess it's no problem now, it's to the Midway. And so I had to take the arming device over. And so I went over in one of them bosun chairs between the 2 ships, and I had to get all the paperwork and get it all signed for and all that. So that was the first transfer of a nuclear weapon at sea.
It was really sad. I hated to take him over to the dock and I watched that ship leave till I couldn't see it anymore. It was a little bitty dot. I made up my mind then that I was never going to stay and watch that ship leave.
Well, in the early days when we didn't have cell phones and all that kind of communications, it was always by letter. So you drop letters off. Well, sometimes you'd get a bundle of 7 letters at a time. A lot of times they would fly the mail into the carriers that was with us, and then the carriers would distribute them to all the ships in the fleet. So we kept in touch by letters.
I wrote to him every night. Every night. I don't think I ever missed a night, a day that I didn't write to Dave when he was gone. And he wrote to me every other night, always. Always. And we've got a ton of letters. And I don't know, I told him one day we're going to have a bonfire or something, because I don't know whether we want to leave those to the kids or not.
And in Vietnam, I got to call her about once a month. We had an old fella, well, he's a naval officer. He was a captain in Seattle that ran a ham station. And he would radio into the Delta, get a hold of us, and he'd stay with us, and each guy would get so many minutes, and he could get on there and do by ham radio to Seattle. Then he would call from Seattle to their home, and we could talk for a few minutes, you know.
I cried a lot. I mean, I'm just a real sentimental person anyway, I guess, and I really miss. I was a lot younger then, and I really, it was hard, you know. And I had the 3 kids, and frankly, you know, you never know whether you're going to see them again or not, you know. And it's a good thing I have the 3 little ones, because I don't know what I would have done without them.
She's had a tremendous effect on me, because she is so kind and so generous to a fault. And a lot of times she's the sentiment in the family. And I had to be sign of the rock. And sometimes that was difficult, because she's just so sentimental about everything and so kind.
And it was not the easiest thing, but one thing that you have to remember is the Navy family is really a good unit. I mean, they're there for one another. And I had a lot of Navy friends who were in the same boat as I was, and so we kind of kept each other going, you know. And I would call one friend and say, "Did you hear from so and so, her husband today?" You know, and she says, "No, did you hear from yours?" You know, and it just kept you going for 5 or 6 months of the time they were gone. When we were separated in the military, we hardly ever argued. Dave never left mad at me, or I wasn't mad at him, because, you know, you just never knew if you'd see each other again. And coming home was just another honeymoon.
Our separations made us stronger. And because I had the wife that I do, she could tolerate that separation. But it did make us stronger.